Yeah.
Seatbelts on? Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah, the previous presentation was about security, and one topic I'm really sort of like passionate about. And now we're talking about my true passion, ZK. I think first let's start with a few introductions. I think would love to know what you do at your companies and what you're passionate about as well. And I know we have one face here who's not on the slide deck there as well. So I'm Shiv. I'm the CIO of Risk. I manage the product engineering teams. Been there a year and a half. Before that, I worked at Ava Labs, the company behind Avalanche. Before that, Coinbase. Most of my software engineer career was at Microsoft and Amazon, selling database services and working on Alexa. And yeah, then I moved into this crazy industry, and it's been like a roller coaster ride.
Hi folks, I'm Sylve, co-founder of Hylé. We're a base layer specialized for ZK applications.
Hi, I'm co-founder and CEO of Gateway. We are a platform as service, and we're mostly like a blockchain infrastructure company but we are focusing mostly on ZK adoption to, I would say, the wider industry itself, and focusing on the application side.
Hi, I'm Mark, CEO of Fuse. We're building an L2 for businesses, and we've been doing it for quite a while. Didn't pivot, but I think finally the technology caught up with what we're building. It's really hard to imagine building something like Fuse in 2019 when we started, but today with account abstraction, ZK, stablecoin adoption, it just feels like this is the next step.
Hi guys, so I'm Rebeca. I'm working as a DevRel for Routescan. I've been working in the space for more than 4 years, I think, and yeah, I'm currently working as a DevRel, where we are building a multi-chain block explorer for all the chains, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm getting some cues there to like hold the mic closer. For our conversation, my job here is to just sort of poke you guys with like topics and let you at it. Like, I'm definitely not going to call on people. So jump right in, politely interrupt and take over. If you want to give a spicy take, go for it as well. Live feedback there. So, I mean, really, I want to first start by sticking to the brief, right? Like privacy and interop. I think you just told us that you didn't realize, you didn't anticipate you could build a company like Fuse because how much stuff is actually caught up. I am quite curious what in privacy and interop do you feel is getting you excited? What do you think is happening that you feel like, oh shit, it's catching on? What gets you excited and gets you up in the morning?
It's for everybody, right? Not
Yeah, sure.
I'll start. I think that people don't understand. I think that the word privacy is loaded, with a lot of baggage. In crypto, it's negative baggage a little bit, but you can't really have mainstream adoption without privacy. You don't really need the same trust guarantees, the same flows, the same infrastructure for buying a cup of coffee for $5 and for moving 100 millions, between money managers across continents. And it doesn't really seems like there's one size fits all solution that's something we said in the early days. And the second thing, money is not fungible if everybody can see how much money is not money if everybody can see how much you earn. For business applications, it's only good for flexing on Twitter. It's not really good for the real world, and it's not going to be adopted unless there's going to be really different way of thinking.
Yeah, I can jump in. I can give a take from the infrastructure side, because this is what we have been building for. As just adding to what Mark is saying, that it's really getting very interesting right now, because we're seeing the evolution of the technology and the maturity of the technology as well. And we're talking to clients, from enterprises as well, and obviously, like Mark as well, into specific use cases. And as a part of, and we are seeing some good innovative solutions, and players like Nightfalls, let's say, who from EY, or Paladin, which is an open source technology from Linux Foundation, and even us, like essentially, right, like helping with that. So the fact that it's exciting for us to integrate this as a part of a platform and as an offering, and address these questions, because this is what we see as one of the core questions as well. Like, hey, actually, we're ready to build on public blockchain, but then ultimately privacy is the key requirement for us, and how do we achieve that, right? So the fact that now we are able to answer it and at least start and engaging in a very meaningful conversation, and we do see that an acceleration is going to happen, and that's what is very exciting as well for us.
I am curious, what do customers actually say, right? Like, I think like privacy is one of those interesting things which is hard to sort of get very specific on. It's one of those things that everyone wants, but like finally we have technology to sort of map it. I am curious, how does a customer actually engage in that conversation? Like, honestly, just like from my perspective, working in a ZKVM company, I am always curious, like, how does a customer actually like come to someone who provides infrastructure or services and go like, yeah, that's what I want? Or what do they actually come to you and you go, yeah, I know how to like solve this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, as I said, like we are very in early stages right now, and that's why we said like we have been selectively engaging in terms of like some proof of concepts, but you're rightly spot on. Like they said, look, we want privacy, but they don't know what, right? So we are actually, to be honest, like this is the year where we'll be going through those selective conversations and defining the use cases and some workflows as well, right? Like, but again, like through payments or RWAs, essentially, right? Like where we are going through some of these use cases step by step. That's where it is right now.
Sounds good. I think like another aspect of ZK in particular is performance and cost, right?
Yeah.
Like I think for the longest time, the shadow on top of like ZK technology has been like, it's probably not fast enough, or you have to write like this custom DSL, like the Verdice folks are like talking about that, and there's like 7 people who know how to do it and 4 people who know how to audit it. So the 14 people are just hanging out in a bar, I guess. And ZKVMs came in, and like now like there's a whole new paradigm around how you can reduce performance and cost. How do you see the trend is going? Is customers and app builders catching up? Is there a lag, or do you feel like, obviously from my perspective, I'm pretty bullish. I'm a moderator, but a pretty biased one at that. Yeah. How do you feel from your point of view and the engagements and the conversations that you have?
I think the ZKVMs have definitely been like a massive unlock, but I think it was an unlock like mentally for people, like, oh, now I can actually do ZK. But when you actually look at who's using them in practice, is really good for anything that is pertaining to like server-side proving. So you're talking about layer 2s, et cetera, et cetera. So we work with a lot of app builders, and some of the requirements actually revolve around privacy. They want to build privacy-preserving applications. And you very quickly run into an issue that ZKVMs are fantastic to use, but they're very memory hungry, and it cannot run in a browser. So we actually had a builder who run a benchmark of, okay, I want to prove like a very simple like P256 signature proving client side on Safari mobile. He went through everything, like Hylé, couldn't work, Circom, proving keys are too big, and the only good option that they have right now is like Noir. So we're in a fun position where we have like extremely good tooling for like server-side proving, and it's very efficient, but it's lagging behind in terms of adoption and I think it's also because of demand. Like not a lot of people are asking for it, and the best option currently like seems to be Noir.
Yeah, so maybe one thing that I wanted to say for the first question was that I also see them as a very important, especially those use cases in our space right now, and mostly in DeFi. Like I found it really important and crucial for the DeFi because I'm mostly inclined into that area, and I think that currently they play an important role here, and it's really, really good to have that.
I would add that ZK rollups in this cycle are where optimistic rollups were in the last cycle. I think it's a misunderstood scaling tech. People try to say it's a new kind of rollup, but it's not exactly just an upgrade over optimistic rollups. Every tech stack that has to deal with scalability has ZK on its roadmap. So it's really, I think, something similar to, you asked like, do people ask for it? It's a little bit like, I remember building websites in the year 2000. Everybody would hear about WordPress for the first time, and they would ask, oh, I need open source. is it open source what you're building? So I think in the future there'll probably be some people demanding for ZK, but I think it's a bit like with Web 2 technology, the same thing. Web 3 will have just upgrades under the hood that would be completely transparent for the users. The users maybe will have like the word ZK here and there, and they would know to ask for this or ask for that, but I think everything would be ZK because it's just this ability to do transactions off-chain, which not a lot of people talk about. There's a lot of scalability unlock, but there's also a lot of privacy unlocks. There's also unlocks from aggregation. There's like just several decades worth of evolution for this tech.
Just my thoughts. Like I completely agree with Mark in terms of the cycle. Between the optimistic and the ZK rollups. Optimistic, like they gave us a good sort of guidance in terms of what the requirement or the market needs are. And but definitely, like ZK, we see is where the end game is, and we're working towards it. So again, like you're slightly biased as well, that that we have been working exactly on bringing the cost down, and obviously one of the key infrastructure costs has been the prover technology in the cost, and I guess some of the technology which you guys are working, and this innovation that's happening on the aggregation proving market as well, plus the infra. Which we are working towards, and some of the innovation is happening on the hashes itself towards the execution clients is actually giving us some good breakthrough results. We'll be publishing it out shortly, and we do see this. I would say the performance increasing at the same time, cost coming down. So probably I would say in next 6 months or so, we should see, again, from the infrastructure side, a really good outcome in terms of the cost management itself. Because again, that's for someone like Mark, for example, is going to be one of the key requirements, right? We want that, but at the same time, cost is also a factor.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I think it's very interesting you spoke about WordPress, because one of the things that I talk about internally is what is our Ruby on Rails, because I guess I'm a little bit younger. But I think from my perspective, I basically pay my mortgage by taking Ruby on Rails services and breaking them into microservices at other companies. I do wonder what is that moment, right? Because when you start building web services, you don't really Ruby on Rails and stuff, all the PHP frameworks, they took out all the nonsense, and I just have to write handlers and everything else, just somehow magically happens, it's all secure, and just I have a website up and running. So I am curious, when you talk to folks who are building out their companies now, they're starting to build out a DeFi idea, and they understand the math, they understand the finance bits. How should they be thinking about ZK? What are the questions should they be asking themselves? How much should they be betting on what's happening 6 months down the road versus what they see now? How do they actually navigate that? And of course, I also know it's partly my responsibility as my role to help out with that as well. But I'm a moderator, so I have no responsibilities, to be honest here. So what do you guys think? How should someone who's starting out now to build their company and they're going out to get their seed funding, how should they use their time, and how should they invest in ZK?
That's a tough question. Yeah. I think that in the last cycle we saw a little bit of business adoption, but I can ask, it's a really simple question. Do you think that Ethereum is B2B or B2C?
That's my job, so I think you're asking the panel.
Yeah, so for the panel, I think it's a debatable question. It definitely started not B2B. And I think that the business model for blockchain is pure B2B. And the reason it has adoption currently is because it's been fueled by investors and builders. So basically, if you want to use a blockchain, you need to be an investor. And this is how the product is designed. You need to invest in Ethereum to pay gas. Basically, you need to understand the price fluctuations. You need to understand opportunity cost. This is all investor jargon. So there's a lot of investors. There's an even bigger herd that is following them, and we all call that consumer adoption, mainstream adoption. It is not. It's not even close. To get, we, in my opinion, got to the glass ceiling of crypto. probably desktop wallets and MetaMask add-ons reach its glass ceiling, and I think L1s also. There's less Ethereum killers. I don't see any Ethereum killers in this cycle. I see a lot of Solana killers, and everybody are doing ZK. So it's not like maybe the right question is like which ZK should I ask for, and I think we're not there yet.
On that front, especially, I think we've mostly been looking at ZK from like the privacy aspects and the scaling aspects, but the one thing that actually, in our opinion at Hylé, is the one thing that is going to be able to help us break that glass ceiling is the accessibility aspect. Like ZK is a way to like extend, for example, a signature. So you have like your passport, and that means that you can actually reach users where they are. Like you actually currently, it is possible to build an application where you can airdrop an entire country because you can geofence based on passports. You can send money to someone's email address. And I think that's like the one thing where we haven't seen a lot of like innovation. And you have like good teams. You have like ZK Email, Cursive, Passport, Open Passport. There was a company recently like Sylve from the Sylve ecosystem. This is really cool. But I mean, you folks have been like hard at work on the server side of things. We need the same version, but like for client side now.
I mean, it feels like I'm here just taking orders. I'll just take my notes and like really have someone in the audience just like, Tina, please just keep taking notes. Like, it feels like they're writing our product roadmap for us. But it is important for us as well, right? Like I think there is quite a lot of innovation in the space, and I do agree. It is a spicy take, but it's also there's a lot of credibility there as well in that it is hard to build B2C on major L1s. I think I would say it's hard. It's not like it's not, nobody designed it that way. It's just the constraints happen to like just put themselves in this kind of weird order. But I do want to ask, like, how do we actually like break that, right? Like I think it is, all of it requires VC funding. Like I'd like to be paid, please. Like don't work for free, really. Who's going to pay for the leather jackets?
I thought alignment paid for itself.
But like there is where do we see, where should we be investing our energies to like really start opening up the ZK ecosystem? Like I think it's very critical because you guys are very close to the customer's voice. So I'm curious.
I mean, just a bit of a take over here. I think I said like it's an evolving roadmap, and the evolution is there, right? And that's why, in a way, as a part of the customers, it's more like a hand-holding or education as well. And I do agree with what you said in terms of that ZK has been focusing mostly on scalability and privacy as well, right? That those are the use cases we'll be talking about. But like our take is more like how can we abstract away this complexity itself? Do they even, as Mark said, like going forward in future, do they? I mean, that should be by default that it's it is there. So we are focusing, or at least like what we think is like should be focusing on tooling and education as well. At the same time, like understand what the needs are, and maybe start with a setup, let's say, which is non-ZK, for example, which solves the requirement or addresses the current requirement, but at the same time have a path to upgrade and migrate to a ZK. I mean, this is how we look into essentially, right? Where exactly there is no, so it's essentially like having a migration path and education and also abstraction, which which is our take, which how we see it.
This is actually where, so it's not a kosher opinion, but this is actually where I think TEEs really shine, because it allows you as an application developer to give your users a taste of what like real-time proving is going to look like client-side in like a few months, a few years. And I mean, people are talking with Claude and ChatGPT as if they were their own shrinks. Yeah. So I think we really love having like tinfoil hats on the blockchain space, but people are already like doing some crazy stuff with LLM. So
yeah, I also agree with all the answers that were said here, but I do also agree and stand on the fact that probably educational stuff, like it's really important, and also the accessibility, like you said it's something that develops more growth and certainly drives the space further. And yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah, let me double click on the education bit. I got some interesting feedback in ETH Denver itself. It was a little bit of a spicy take, so I won't like really take anyone's name here. But one thing that someone said was like, yeah, it is a little bit condescending, is what they said, like the ZK conversation, because it's basically unapproachable unless you know, even if you've been working for like 15 years, I'm taking my own example, right? I've been working for 15 years. I roughly understand how computer systems work. I build distributed systems. I have a degree in CS. Like, I should be able to grasp it really quickly, but it took me a while. My CEO Jeremy is very polite. He's very nice. He's very kind. He's taking the time to explain everything, but I don't get the bit math of it, right? Like when he started explaining binary fields, and I just faked a meeting and just ran out. So there is an element of this being inaccessible. Yeah. It's not the same as like, here's a bunch of APIs. Like, here's how we put it together. Like, it's actually a little bit more around how you actually even design stuff. Like. I was trying to explain to this gentleman once who had like this workload where he was sorting like some 16 million rows inside the ZK, and I was like, don't do that. Just verify that it's sorted. It's like way faster, bro. And he was like, oh yeah. But there is like a light bulb moment for like folks. I am curious, how should we go about education, right? Because I see three kinds of education. I'm going to try and give everyone a framework as well. AWS style, like just get in there, lots of documentation, very expensive, need a lot of money. Then there's like Porter style, like open up the code base, go on for like 5 hours. And you know, the other one is just build tons and tons of applications with reusable code. I am curious, what do you think is most effective, or if you have a fourth method, and how should we be spending our energy in educating people?
Well, I think my take might be a little bit spicy. You don't need to educate everybody. I think it's a bit like educating people about HTTP. At some point, you stopped convincing people what is better HTTP. You know, we're still trying to upgrade HTTP 2.0 or 3.0, I don't remember. Still half of the internet uses the old HTTP, which is good enough. Nobody really tries to educate people to use the upgraded TCP IP. It's something that, every version that you have, every complexity that you have in the technology, just means that it's more used, it's more functional, and it's more under the hood. Nobody really knows what's the algorithms that Google used. They innovated on UX. Same for Amazon, same for, cloud. Cloud model is not really an innovation that is technological, it's a business innovation. I think ZK is very similar to that. It just unlocks a lot of like upgrades in the consumer layer. And I think the upgrades are like, there's like a little bit low-hanging fruits. There's a little bit longer-term upgrades. I think the lowest hanging fruit is bridging. This is where users will find ZK for the first time. This is the holy grail. This is why everybody, I want to build on Agler, and like this narrative is really strong. It's not about, which has the best ZK tech. It's what ZK tech is being used. And I think in the short term, it's bridging. In the midterm, I think the really big unlock is connecting account abstraction to ZK. It's like two very powerful approaches to improving UX and scalability, and this is actually using Ethereum like it was meant to be by Vitalik, and in the long term, privacy.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mark over here, and from our side, the take essentially given your framework, what you have provided is like we're more like a AWS style in a way, where it's all about a bit of documentation, but again much more targeted, because obviously it's a lot of investment, but we want to make sure that it just having that sanity in terms of or that we keep on building the documentation, just make it exposing based on whatever we were learning as we go along. And at the same time, we do essentially is we're also trying to work on some approaches on workshops, but not to the details as said by Mark over here in a way, is that just certain use cases, what is coming across. Because along with tooling, this is what we think is going to help. It's all about making this conversation comfortable, but also maybe again, removing the complexity from the conversations. It's talking about how you can apply this technology and what benefits this can bring you, instead of going into the math as well. Again, for example, right? That's the take we have.
Something I've realized at Denver is that you're right. People do consider the ZK community as very highbrow, and it's still moon math. Even though we had, we're able to prove the OP stack before we got fraud proofs, but it's still moon math. the poster child for ZK right now seems to be ZK-TLS, even though, and I encourage everyone to look at that. It's a great blog post from the Reclaim team saying there's not necessarily ZK and ZK-TLS, but like they take the highbrow thing and they turn it into something that looks interesting for people. So maybe like another approach for education is rather, okay, you're going to have to chew glass and understand what a PCS is and binary fields, etc. But the end goal is, for example, that you're able to port data on chain, for example, and that's really cool because then you get like into ideas. Oh, maybe I can create like a on-chain credit graph or under collateralized loans if I can prove that I'm in the top 1% earner of a particular country, etc., etc. So if you give people an incentive to use a particular piece of technology, they're going to chew glass, basically.
I feel like ZK is not ready enough for most of crypto to use it. That's the problem. Why they're feeling like condescending or don't really connect. It's not. It's a bit like when we started our company and pitched to investors in 2019. We said, everybody is going to use blockchains to pay, and blockchains are really comfortable for developers. They're not just. They're not comfortable for real people. So I think we were really wrong that blockchains are comfortable for developers. And I think the biggest misconception is, should all developers know Solidity? I think when somebody is building an ERC20 competitor, it's a big miscalculation. You better build on top of something battle tested, already safeguarding billions of dollars, and you shouldn't try and like build your own contract every time you want something. So I think that's what I understand in terms of crypto adoption today, that you kind of need to package things very well and bundle them if you have if you want to get new blood, if you want to get new customers, new types of usage, and one size fits all solution is just that didn't work.
I would tend to disagree there. If you look at, for example, anything pre-2008, like in terms of like internet tech, like we had Flash. And like, I think in blockchain, for example, we try to be very reformists because we're in a weird industry that is still, except like stable coins and a few very like use cases, it's still difficult to point to something and say, oh, that's what it's used for. At least the internet had like, oh, you can look shit up online. And I think we really hell-bent on, oh no, we need to reuse the tech that already exists. And so that's why you see a lot of L1s like, oh, we're substrate-based, oh, we're Cosmos-based. I mean, we tried using that, and that was horrendous. So we just rebuilt everything from the ground up. So I would disagree on this thing, and especially because we now have ZK, I think it's like the perfect time to actually make a bold bet and say, okay, maybe we can redesign a lot of the things that we're doing right now, and for example, do away with Solidity, or maybe if you want to use Solidity, you use ZK EVM, and for the 2,000 devs that are still going to be using it in 10 years, it's fine for them, but everyone else is going to be like using Rust, or by then we may be able to like ZK-proof COBOL and bring the banks online.
You know, we were one of the people developing on Flash like 20 years ago, and I
God
can
bless your soul.
Yeah, and I can
Steve
say
Jobs, I guess.
And this was right about the time with Ruby on Rails. This was also around the time where the first WordPress and PHP. So I this resonates with me, like this discussion, because we learned it firsthand, and I really think that that in crypto especially, network effects are really the name of the game, right? In the age of Flash, you would go to a library or to a bookstore. You wouldn't have like stuff online to read, right? There was no network effects. This idea was not even like Facebook didn't exist yet. Like the whole thesis behind Facebook valuation and network effects is something that didn't exist before Web 2. And Flash actually is a Web 1 product. And I think it's clear for me that I'm doing this for more than a decade, doing like crypto full time, that building today, things like when we started our first company in 2013, we had to build our own Explorer, our own wallet, our own everything. And today, we just get it out of the box. And you really need this perspective of like going through cycles to see how fast we have come to this point. But it's really hard to decide what is the better tech before there's network effects, specifically in crypto. Like we were trying to build like an ERC20 competitor back in the day. Just something in retrospect.
Talking by experience.
Yeah, yeah. So in retrospect, it's definitely like you need a sense of smell for the technology, and a lot of times, if a technology is sexy, it means it doesn't work yet. That's my fear.
The technology smell, I think that's a new one. Code smell, I know, but like
No, smell for opportunity, you know.
Yeah, my take on that would be that I really liked what you said, the last thing, the third thing, that just being there and building stuff and getting there. I think even though if you have the documentation or the tools or the, I don't know, tutorials, everything, like if you don't have like the drive to build things, you will never get to experience it or to develop it more. And I think all things of value that have been developed were developed by just being there and trying to build and trying again and just developing more. So I think that's how you educate people. Like, and if there's drive for that, I think it will definitely get into something or flourish into something really good.
Yeah. I have like one last question, and then I'll open it up for the audience if they have questions. Let's say we did a really good job and they have us back next year to do the same conference and maybe more comfortable chairs. Sorry, just making a joke there. But I do feel like I'm going to fall off. What do you think we'd be talking about? And I do want all of you to like go through that in any order. You want to start?
I think if all of this works, we'll all wonder why we did believe that L2s could scale Ethereum back then, and psych up ourselves into thinking that native rollouts will solve anything.
I'm just thinking of like more on interop essentially, right? Because this whole aggregation of the liquidity across, because again, like with all this scaling and all this L1 and L2 scaling, it just fragmentation is there. It's just all about, and that's what I would think like is one of the big use cases also for ZK, if you can actually do that. So that's I would say is probably next year.
My take is completely biased. Like I think I think everybody would talk about transparent blockchains, blockchains that don't show you gas, bridging, that you don't even see which stablecoin you're using. It's just dollars. It feels like Robinhood, TradeFi, but it's non-custodial. I don't think we have too many options like that today.
Is anyone building that? Because you know.
Yeah, at least talking about it, but yeah.
Yeah, so my take maybe just a standardized Zeka stack, like development stack. Sorry for, I just keep taking the mic down. But yeah, I think that one could be one of the subjects as well.
Sounds good.
How about you?
Yeah, for me, like, I'm, of course, thank you for asking me. Slipping you $20 here. Like, for me, like, I think, yeah, I'm particularly biased, right? Like, my day-to-day is all about ZKVMs and, like, forwarding that mission. Like, in a lot of ways, like, crypto Twitter and events, they try to get into your head a lot. Like, be like, this is where the trend is. This is where things are going. But I like the fact that you mentioned that, you know, I could see the pain in your eyes when you talk about Flash. For me, it's like building on Symbian, like the stupid OS. It's you have to focus on the fundamentals for me. Like, I think you're right. It is a new technology. Like, if I have to assume that there is someone like me sitting on the other side in every company who is like, I'm not going on call for that. You crazy, right? Like, that's the SRE mindset. Like, we have customers, we have money, we're trying to build our credibility. We need to make sure that everything works. And if I know that is how people are evaluating me, I really want to focus on that for the next 12 months to make sure I can talk to the Shiv who's working on the other side and be like, don't worry, I got you, right? Like, and I think AWS does a really good job of that. Like, if you talk to their folks, all the cloud companies have cracked that. It is a business problem. It's also a sales and trust problem as well, like person to person. And I think like the way to solve that is to hit the roads, make sure you're talking to people, like hearing them out. Like for me, like one of the reasons I signed up to be a moderator is listen to you guys, like, and take notes and go back and like change the roadmap again. But yeah, I'd love to like throw it open to the audience if anyone has questions.
Sorry, I'm pretty new to like ZK. I just want to ask a like very.
Could you just introduce yourself and just?
Oh right, so my name is Sun. I do developer community, and yeah, so I always want to learn like more about ZK, but it's really tough, to be honest. So like earlier, because everyone mentioned that ZK is like the end game for scalability and also like privacy, but just now I think Mark mentioned the future, like the high hanging fruit is privacy. But why is that? I thought like shouldn't ZK be built for like could be used in scalability but also in privacy, but why does it sound like privacy is so much difficult to achieve?
What I meant is that right now we have some scaling solutions that use ZK. We don't have a lot of privacy solutions at all in crypto because of Tornado Cash and all the negative baggage that what I said in the beginning. This is why I think it's further down the line. It's just more sensitive to use it. Like for instance, Starknet could easily be a scaling and privacy project, but it does scaling. I also think that maybe I don't really know the ZK space well enough because I'm more like a user of ZK. That's how we see ourselves. We don't develop a new ZK algorithm or a new ZK stack, but I do have memory from how crypto evolved in the early days, where you had like competing, like you had at least 20 Ethereum killers, and before Ethereum killers you have at least 20 Bitcoin killers, and on top of Bitcoin you had a lot of competing algorithms for minting tokens, and Tether was minted on Bitcoin in the past. And my lesson from this is that everybody thought they're competing, but they ended up not competing. So I think there's a lot of place for a lot of ZK innovations, one for privacy, one for scaling. It's not like, again, I'm against one size fits all. It's just not how technology works.
I mean, if I can just, I'll give just an example of the use case of privacy for over here, right? Let's say there is they're like a health tech company, essentially built on AWS, where they're distributing their, let's say, platform, and it's all about clinical trials, for example, and there's a lot of sensitive information data stored there on cloud. But essentially, and then biggest concern is that sensitive data. How do you keep it secure? And the amount of, like, I'm talking about in the use case perspective, right? Like, so one of the biggest budget expenses or the cost they will be spending is on security, right? For me, this is where the privacy comes into play. With ZK, essentially, you can, if you can solve it properly, right? Like, and that cost disappears, or at least reduces drastically. So that is where you bring efficiency and sort of trust in a way, right? The whole system itself. So that is an example of like how this technology will take it forward and not only make better applications, but also have a lot of cost saving, which is what is happening. Because this is what you see in enterprises. Like the biggest issue is like hacks. How do we make it secure and everything as well? So part of that is going to be like, solved. And this is why like I'm like very much excited, right? This is where, as an example, like, this helps as well. So just an example.
Yeah, for sure. I heard about, because I do like developer communities. So for example, I built like a developer community in Argentina, and in Argentina there's this project called Cork ID. It's built on ZK Sync. Basically, you can create a ZK credential about your personal identity without the information leaving your phone, things like that. But I'm just curious, like earlier, like Mark mentioned, not many people are exploring the privacy part, is because of the regulation here in US. But I'm just curious, like just now, I couldn't pronounce the name. Sorry.
Pradeep. Yeah.
Pradeep,
yeah.
Like Mr. Pradeep, you mentioned about that's like medical and so many other fields that could be using privacy in a much safe and regulated and much like better way, efficient way for the enterprises. But why aren't people exploring that at the moment, especially like maybe places outside America?
You have very few use cases, to be honest, and most of the capital is directed towards like who actually needs proof right now, and most of these are roll-ups at the moment. And if you have so that's why a lot of the customer-facing ZK applications are more like toys at the moment, because there's the tech is still not really there, and there's just not enough research. A really good example there would be at DEF CON, for example. They use ZK Passport to prove that you came from a Southeast Asian country, and that is fantastic. It is privacy preserving, but that's not the main kicker. The main kicker is that you don't have to pay a KYC provider. That's just fantastic.
I just want to clarify. When I said privacy, it's less about evading taxes and more about paying taxes, like being able to like pay taxes privately, you know, where only you and your accountant know that that the transaction happened. And it's I think the reason nobody's really looking at it, it's just not big enough of a problem. Like our problem right now is that there's not a lot of merchant adoption, and if merchant use crypto, they just cash out through Coinbase and that's it. And regulation was really bad, not because of privacy, just because it created like a bad stigma for the space. I think once businesses will start using it, they'll start asking themselves questions like, why is my competitor can see everything I earn? You know, basic stuff.
Yeah, so just to your example of the ID project, right? So again, the same thing. I think in the same fashion that again, identity and like credentials, verifiable credentials. Again, like if you look into banks, the biggest concern is again leakage of data, and if you extrapolate that with this identity and like without even sharing my credential, I can prove like who I am, my age, or my credentials that I have driver's license, I can drive in US or not, for example. Like, so these are the things which is what we see is going to happen in future. But for me, the near-term benefit, the best way to explain essentially is along with the privacy is the cost savings, and it does resonate massively straight away, right? Like you don't even have to worry about it, you don't have to get it audited, and you will save millions. That's just a good conversation opener straight away.
Yeah,
I think you'll agree with that straight away.
Yeah, I will, and I'll also add like 2 personal life experiences, lots of pain in my eyes again. Like I managed compliance at Lyft, so all of like onboarding drivers, so working for KYC, background checks, like all over the US and Canada. I also did onboarding and compliance at Coinbase as one of my portfolios. Fuck, right? So it's I think like one, and I like the toy metaphor here, which is like it's not the mechanism, it's a whole ecosystem of shit you need to do KYC, right? Like, and I think what we need to do, and now I'm moving away from my moderator position here to answer this because I'm very passionate about this, because I did talk to a bunch of, I won't name them, background check providers who also do background checks for the US military and whatnot. And I was like, why don't you guys use blockchain? It's like, oh, privacy, dude. And I was like, oh, and why don't you just convince them and build something? And it's like, yeah, no. It's that simple. I think once the cost savings show up, right, that's when capitalism kicks in. You create an opportunity for someone to go, I can save money. How you can save money is very clear, and you can draw that line. People race towards that. I can't even tell you how much like Lyft and Coinbase spend on like compliance. It's a lot. They could hire a large team. It was a large team. So I think we're kind of like out of time. I really want to thank the panel.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the enjoyable conversation. And yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the good questions.